Hi guys, and welcome to the review. Today we are looking back at WCW nWo, the Great American Bash. Now this pay-per-view came to us all the way from Baltimore. It was June 14, 1998, as Tony Schiavone would put it. Now we had a ton of great action happening here at the Great American Bash. A lot was happening on this night for WCW. Now we had 4 titles on the line here at the Bash. We also had the Best of 7 series. Remember that, between Chris Benoit and Booker T? Well, that culminated here on this night at the Great American Bash. An epic series that was. Also throw in Hollywood Hogan and Bret the Hitman Hart teaming for the first time ever, and they were going up against Roddy Piper and the Macho Man Randy Savage. An epic matchup there. Also, we had Sting taking on the Giant for those vacated World Tag Team titles. An absolutely epic night. A lot of action. Let's go check it out. So great match here to kick off the night, guys. It was Booker T taking on Chris Benoit in a qualifying match. The winner here would go on to take on Finlay later in the night for the WCW TV title. Booker T and Benoit had stepped into the ring 7 times before in a best of 7 series for the #1 contender position for the TV title. This was number 8 of the best of 7. Confused? During the 7th match, with the score tied at 3-3, Bret Hart, in an nWo Hollywood recruiting effort, slammed Booker T in the back when the official was not looking. Laying out Booker T, Hart encouraged Benoit to cover him and move on to face Fit Finlay for the TV title. Benoit, however, refused to win by cheating and told the ref what happened. J.J. Dillon then threw out match 7 and declared a new match would be held, with the winner going on to face Finlay later in the pay-per-view. The match was brutal as always, with 2 of the toughest grapplers toe-to-toe once again. This time for the chance to move on and possibly win the TV title from another of the sport's toughest, Finlay. Several hard chops from Benoit elicited a loud chorus of oohs and ahs from the crowd, as they really did feel Booker T's pain. Move after move was countered by these two, with the crippler working on weakening Booker T for the crossface. A Benoit chinlock and a front suplex across the top rope sent Booker T to the outside with a thud. Undaunted, Booker T came back time and time again to inflict punishment on Benoit, who ended up on the mat after a vicious Booker T kick to the head. Benoit worked on Booker T's knee, inflicting great pain on his opponent, then went for the diving headbutt, allowing him a 2 count as Booker T summoned all his strength to kick out. After connecting with a Harlem sidekick, Booker T went up top and delivered a devastating missile dropkick to Benoit for the cover, the win, and the chance to wrestle for the TV title once again. The winner here, guys, and the man who would go on to face Fit Finlay later on in the night, Booker T. So next up, guys, we had Saturn taking on Kanyon. Kanyon, of course, formerly known as Mortis, and he had been refused admission to the flock, and he was ready and willing to take on all flock members to vent his hurt and anger. Saturn fired off several kicks, then whipped Kanyon into the turnbuckle while the entire flock surrounded the ring, taking shots at Kanyon whenever possible. Saturn, who had previously denounced the flock, jumped over the top rope and flattened the flock members, reminding them that their help was neither wanted nor needed. As the flock was ordered back to the locker room, Saturn was bringing a chair into the ring. Setting it up, he used it as a springboard to drop kick Kanyon. Then, in an awesome move, hopped the chair and moonsaulted off the ropes, flattening Kanyon. Despite their exhaustion, neither man would submit and neither would allow a pin. Up on the top rope, the two continued their fight, resulting in Kanyon falling from the top and hitting his head and back on the ring on the way down. Saturn smelled victory. However, 2 Mortis lookalikes came to ringside and started battling it out. Saturn was visibly distracted by the goings-on, allowing Kanyon to deliver a reverse Russian leg sweep on him for the win. On the outside, Kanyon fell victim to an even flow DDT by one of these fake Mortis lookalikes. Raven then revealed himself as the man behind the mask. Yelling to Saturn for losing, Raven belittled his friend and former flock member. Saturn, a look of rage in his eyes, could take no more and went after Raven, who quickly escaped the ring and let the Flock do his dirty work. However, Saturn took out each member, belly to belly, suplexing them and letting Raven and the Flock know that nobody messes with Saturn. Winner here, Kanyon by pinfall. Next up, we had the matchup for the Cruiserweight title. It was Chris Jericho taking on Dean Malenko. Now, due to Jericho's conspiracy theory, the title was vacated and the two men were to wrestle once again for the belt. A reluctant Jericho and a determined Malenko entered the ring as Malenko cornered Jericho and punched and kicked him until the referee had to step in and separate the two. As Jericho shadowboxed with the ref and showboated, Malenko was totally focused on wreaking revenge on his nemesis. Jericho managed a sleeper on Malenko, who somehow turned and elbowed Jericho and slapped on the very same sleeper to the Lionheart. As the fans chanted Malenko's name, Jericho became distracted, missing a lion salt. Up top, a Jericho Frankensteiner flattened both men for the 9 count. At last, Jericho found his focus and slapped on the Lion Tamer in mid-ring. Malenko, in an incredible show of strength, managed to crawl to the ropes to break the hold. The Iceman then got the Texas Cloverleaf on and surprised Jericho, but like Malenko, he managed to get to the ropes and break the devastating hold. And then it happened. Jericho slapped Malenko on the face, then shouted, "You're nothing, just like your dead father." That's right, that's what Jericho said to Malenko at that moment. And you could hear Malenko snap. No longer caring about the title, Malenko went outside the ring and grabbed a chair, a look of fury in his eyes, and slammed Jericho with amazing force. As a disqualification was called and Jericho was declared the winner of the match, Malenko was relentless, punching and kicking Jericho throughout the arena, up the ramp, into the back room, and even out the door to the outside of the building. Jericho was helpless as the rage inside Malenko exploded. He did what any sane person would do when running away from the likes of Malenko. He ran across the street, with traffic coming from all directions. Managing to get across the street, Jericho then ducked into a building for safety as security held Malenko back. It was decided that since Jericho had won the match, albeit via DQ, he would indeed be the Cruiserweight champion once again. I remember watching this at the time. This was a classic end to this match with Jericho running across the street, across the traffic. The two brawled on the outside and backstage. It was a really cool end up to this match. Great feud that these two had going on in WCW at the time as well. But the winner here and the new Cruiserweight champion by disqualification, Chris Jericho. Okay, next up, guys, there's no other way to put this. It was the match between David and Goliath. It really was. It was Juventud Guerrera taking on Reese. The 7'2", 410-pound Reese stepped in the ring with Hovey, a small man with a huge amount of courage. Reese, figuring on an easy win, threw Guerrera into the ring turnbuckle and prepared to pin the Cruiserweight, but Guerrera, time and time again, came back to fight the huge man. Hovey saw that Reese's knees were the place to concentrate on, and he kicked the big man's legs, trying to cut him down to size. Reese, picking Hovey up like a baby, held him high over his head and then stretched Guerrera over his knee and slammed him to the mat. Hovey's never surrender motto must have been swirling around in his head, because even after all the punishment he endured, he refused to give up, refused to stop trying to get the big man down. Reese, the classic bully, went to the outside and got a chair, preparing to finish off the man who he had clearly underestimated. Luckily, the referee grabbed the chair just as Reese went to swing it at a helpless Guerrera. Van Hammer appeared out of nowhere and slammed the biggest Flock member with a chair to the back, while the ever-annoying Lodi had the referee distracted. Falling like a tree in the woods, Reese went down, and Juventud covered the big guy for the pin. After the match, Van Hammer, former Flock member turned Flock enemy, celebrated with Guerrera as Reese stomped around the ring in frustration. Unbelievable result here, guys, but it was Juventud Guerrera. He got the win over the big man Reese in this one. Next up, guys, we had Chavo Guerrero Jr. He was taking on Eddy Guerrero. and it started out as a great plan for Eddy. He would get his nephew to do anything he wanted. He got Chavo to wrestle matches for him. He got Chavo to wear a t-shirt proclaiming that you should cheat to win. For weeks, Eddy taunted Chavo in the guise of helping Chavo to make his family proud. Somewhere along the line, Chavo snapped. And as the two stepped in the ring to face each other, it was Eddy, not Chavo, who was the reluctant participant. An intense brawl ensued right after the bell rang and continued until the very end, with Chavo taunting and mocking his uncle, as well as slamming Uncle Eddy's head into the turnbuckles. Eddy walked away from the match early on, but Chavo was right behind him, pulling his uncle back into the ring. A Chavo moonsault to Eddy flattened him on the outside, and Eddy, realising he was up against a tough opponent, not the Chavo he knew weeks ago, finally turned up the heat. Smashing Chavo's head into the steel ring steps, Eddy then threw Chavo into the ring and delivered a spinebuster suplex to his nephew. Chavo went off the deep end, choking Eddy until the referee pulled the crazed Chavo off his uncle. Eddy skipped out of the ring and a mad dash ensued, with Chavo hot on his heels as they circled the ring a few times before Eddy jumped back in the ring and hid behind the reluctant referee, begging for mercy. Eddy finally emerged from behind the ref to slap the figure four on Chavo, but in his state of mind, we doubt Chavo even felt the pain and no tap was forthcoming. A gory special by Eddy was stopped by Chavo, but Chavo then found himself in a chinlock. After refusing to submit, he managed to send Eddy to the outside and then in a quick, fluid movement, suicide dove over the top rope onto his uncle. Back inside the ring, Eddy's frog splash was averted by Chavo, who must have been expecting that move when he saw Eddy go up top, and at last, Chavo springboarded into a tornado DDT, laying out his uncle. Pulling Eddy mid-ring, Chavo covered him for the win. The winner here, Chavo Guerrero by pinfall. So next here at the Great American Bash, guys, we had Booker T, the challenger. He was taking on Fit Finlay for the TV title. Booker T was back after only a few matches to rest after beating Benoit for this title shot. Finlay was ready to capitalise on Booker T's exhaustion as the two locked up and began an intense brawl. The Belfast Bruiser started out strong, working mostly on the mat and trading submission holds with the challenger. Finlay then saw that Booker T's knee was injured from his previous match with Benoit and went for it, kicking and punching Booker T with emphasis on Booker T's bad knee. Hooking Booker T's knee, Finlay went for the submission, but tough as nails, Booker T refused to submit despite obvious pain and injury to his knee. A roundhouse kick to Finlay gave Booker a second wind, and a scissors kick sent the champ to the mat. As Finlay was going for the tombstone pile driver, Booker T managed to reverse the move and pile drive his way to the TV title once again. Stevie Ray then came out to celebrate with his brother, raising Booker T's hand in victory. On the surface, it looked like Harlem Heat was as unified as ever. Winner here, guys, and new TV champ, Booker T. Next up, guys, it was the mega tag match, the first ever pairing between Hollywood Hogan and Bret the Hitman Hart. They had the disciple at ringside, and they were taking on the Macho Man Randy Savage and Rowdy Roddy Piper. In what was billed a Legends United against Legends United match, these four men, none of whom were sure of the other's true intentions, stepped into the ring to battle it out. Despite the animosity between Savage and Piper, and there was plenty of it, they worked well as a team and went after the Double H's with focus. Savage took particular delight in dishing out punishment to his nemesis Hogan. The disciple, watching from ringside, found the perfect opening and hit Piper in the back of the head with the heavyweight belt behind the ref's back. Hart further weakened Piper as both Hogan and Hart took turns punishing Piper with kicks and punches. Piper managed to tag in Savage, but to the dismay of the Macho Man, the referee did not see the tag made and forced Savage back into his corner. Finally, Savage could take no more. He snatched a chair, slid it between the ropes, and laid it on a helpless Piper's gut. When Hart went for his headbutt, he connected solidly with the chair, causing Hitman to see stars. At last, the hot tag was made to Savage, who took on both adversaries. As he went up top for the flying elbow, Savage's injured knee gave out, and he ended up writhing in pain on the mat. Meanwhile, the Disciple once again choked Piper with the title belt on the outside of the ring. Hart seized the opportunity, seeing Savage in pain, and slapped on the sharpshooter, and the Macho Man wisely tapped out to avoid further damage to his already seriously injured knee. Piper, seeing Savage in immense pain, tried to help his partner up, despite the fact that they were slated to wrestle each other next. However, the madness that is Savage refused help. In fact, he went after Piper full force, starting the match that Piper was willing to forego due to Savage's injury. But the winner in this tag match, guys, it was Hollywood Hogan and Bret the Hitman Hart by submission. And next up would be Rowdy Roddy Piper taking on Macho Man Randy Savage. On one leg, Savage somehow managed the flying elbow on Piper for a 2 count early on. Savage then turned on the referee, slamming him to the mat. As Piper clamped on the figure 4, there was no one to call the submission, as Savage writhed in pain but refused to give up. At last, another official was sent in to replace the fallen one and called the match, pulling apart Piper and Savage, who was left on the mat holding his knee in intense pain. The winner here, guys, just a quick match. It was Roddy Piper by submission. Savage had nothing left after that tag match with his injured knee. Next up, guys, it was the match for the US Heavyweight title. It was Konnan. He had Ravishing Rick Rude and Kurt Hennig with him at ringside, representing the Wolfpack, and they were taking on the champ, the US champ, Goldberg. Goldberg was 99-0 going into this match and 100-0 coming out. Konnan, a talented luchador and wrestler in his own right, was simply no match for the phenom Goldberg. Goldberg went after Konnan immediately, throwing the Wolfpack member outside the ring. Back inside, Konnan managed to slam Goldberg with a bevy of punches and kicks before becoming a victim of the dreaded spear and jackhammer in just under 2 minutes. The real story took place right after the match as Hennig and Rude, Konnan's Wolfpack allies, stepped into the ring to help one of their own. As they helped to daze Konnan to his feet, Hennig let loose with a slam to the back of Konnan's head. Rude and Hennig continued their brutal beating on K-Dog until Kevin Nash and Lex Luger ran out for the save. Hennig and Rude revealed their true colours, black and white. Another victory for Goldberg, another act of treachery by Hennig. So main event time here at the Great American Bash, guys. It was the Giant. He was taking on Sting for the vacated WCW World Tag Team Championships. Now, these tag titles were vacated, guys, because if you can remember, back at Slamboree in the previous month, it was Scott Hall who turned his back on Kevin Nash in that main event tag team match. And Sting and the Giant actually won the tag team belts that night from the Outsiders. But of course, Sting had joined the Wolfpack and Giant had joined nWo Hollywood, so there was no way that those two were going to coexist as tag team champions, so they both wrestled here with the winner taking possession of both belts. Having split into 2 distinctly different nWo factions, neither man was willing to work with the other, so this match was signed to decide who should hold the tag team belts with a partner of his choice. The Giant made his way to the ring with a cigarette in his mouth and an arrogant look on his face. Sting, donning the red and black of the Wolfpack, endured Giant's blowing smoke in his face for about a second. Sting immediately slapped Giant in the face and splashed him into the ropes. Giant, however, was undaunted. Lifting Sting high in the air, Giant then threw him onto the top rope and picked up the Stinger and bear hugged him until the smaller man nearly passed out from the lack of oxygen. Somehow, though, Sting managed to rally and work on Giant's legs, flattening the huge man. 2 Stinger splashes and a scoop slam to the over 500-pound Giant weakened both men, and Giant was able to stop a Scorpion Deathlock attempt. However, Sting managed a Scorpion Death Drop on the big man for a 2 count. As Giant went for his patented chokeslam, his knee gave way and he became the victim of another Death Drop and another 2 count. 3 was a charm as Sting mustered all his energy and delivered yet another death drop to the Giant, this time for the all-important 3 count. Sting would now possess both tag belts and would go on to pick a partner of his choice to be tag team champion. The winner here, guys, and the holder of the WCW World Tag Team Championship belts, Sting by submission. Okay guys, so that was the Great American Bash edition for 1998, as Tony Schiavone would put it, and it was a great night. There were some great matches on the card, some standout matches in my opinion. The opening match between Booker T and Chris Benoit, that best of 7 series they had, was awesome. They always had Benoit early on in the cards at that time in WCW, and he would always put on some great matches early on in the show. And of course, Booker T was well and truly coming into his own as a singles competitor at that stage, and those two really tore it up in that first match of the night. The ending of the Chris Jericho and Dean Malenko match, when they ran backstage and Jericho ran across the street, it was worth watching the pay-per-view just for that moment. If you have the WWE Network, just click to that match, go straight to the end of it, and you will see some really funny stuff with Chris Jericho and Dean Malenko at the end of that match. Yeah, funny stuff. It is worth watching the pay-per-view just for that. It was pretty cool to see Bret Hart and Hollywood Hogan team up as a tag team against Randy Savage and Roddy Piper. Just your sort of standard sort of match for that time for those guys in WCW. But yeah, good matchup and some big names in that one. We had Goldberg crushing Konnan, defending his United States title. Yeah, just totally ran right over him. A Goldberg squash match here, great to watch. And of course the main event was pretty cool. You had Sting taking on the Giant for the tag team titles. It was a pretty short match. There wasn't a heck of a lot to it, but some cool moments. We had Sting scoop slamming the Giant, so it takes a lot of power and strength to do that, so that's pretty cool to see. And of course the 3 Scorpion death drops from Sting on the Giant to win the match. The third one, of course, coming from the top turnbuckle. So a couple of cool moments in that match. And overall, this was a really solid pay-per-view. Some great moments in the night. Definitely, if you have the WWE Network, check it out on there. Of course, the Great American Bash, a long-running pay-per-view for the company and one of their mainstay pay-per-views. And the 1998 edition certainly lived up to the billing, I thought, with some great moments and matches on the card. So thanks heaps guys for tuning in once again. Remember to leave a thumbs up on the video if you enjoyed it, that would be great. I have a ton of other WCW pay-per-view review videos where I go over the old school WCW pay-per-views, so definitely be sure to check those out, and we will catch you next time.